Today I will be discussing and critically evaluating interviews through reflecting on their use within two studies surrounding the education setting. Before we begin, here's a brief overview of what an interview is. Fontana and Frey explain that interviews can be difficult to conduct due to their subjective nature, but they offer valuable insights into people's thoughts and feelings. They also note that responses can be shaped by personal, social, and environmental factors, which includes the relationship with the interviewer. Holstein and Gubrium see interviews as a way to gain new insights that can support research with relevant and somewhat reliable information. Beck and Perry emphasize the flexibility of interviews, which can explore people's views, issues, and abilities. Whilst interviewers guide the process, participants still maintain control as researchers can only influence response to a limited extent through prompts and cues. Finally, different interview styles can affect the responses given, and researchers often choose a style based on the type of results they want. I will be discussing and critically evaluating how these papers have used interviews to achieve their research aims. Paper 1's aim is to seek and explore schools' engagement with safeguarding and the relationship that the schools have with the authorities, and Paper 2 aims to identify the way school culture is perceived and what is the most important element of school culture for student mental health. Paper 1 chose to use interviews to be able to effectively explore the perspectives of senior education and childcare professionals with their engagement in safeguarding child protection. They sampled 20 local areas which had been stratified into groups depending on their type of authority and geographic location. They chose to have this sample size as it helped them reach multiple diversities and geographic ranges. They interviewed 68 individuals, which was mostly conducted within groups. However, there were 11 one-to-one and 3 over the phone. The study used scoping interviews, which Robertson et al. In 2012 explained as loosely focused and structured, and designed around the concepts and understandings of the research team. Having this loose structure meant participants could expand on questions, which further allowed the researchers to grasp onto their relationship between teachers and authorities, as well as understanding their perspectives. Paper 2 used interviews to explore how students, parents, and staff understood school culture in relation to student mental health. The study focused on 3 secondary schools chosen for their differences in performance and student diversity. Students were selected by staff based on their interest in the study and written explanations for their potential contribution. Teachers were chosen based on their roles in shaping school culture and supporting student well-being. Participation was clearly voluntary, which, as Bill and Lindegger explain, helps reduce power imbalances and encourage honest, open responses. This was also done through semi-structured interviews, which allowed for guided yet flexible conversation, as described by Given in 2008. Researchers used topic guides based on their literature findings to keep interviews focused. The data was then organized into thematic framework with 4 categories: structure and context, organizational and academic, community, and safety and support, which were later presented in the discussion section. Research Paper 1 was successful, with interviews helping build rapport and offering multiple perspectives on safeguarding relationships. According to Holbrook et al., this approach reduced response bias by encouraging honest and thoughtful answers. The interviews provided contextual insights which were structured into a thematic framework guiding the discussion. Interviews also revealed inconsistencies in early help across counties, prompting further research. This led to the publication of Protecting and Safeguarding Children in Schools, a multi-agency approach which expands on the findings using different methods. Group interviews have both benefits and negatives. They offered comfort and shared responsibility, but reduced anonymity and potentially could create power imbalances, which reduces the richness of data collected. Carey and Smith warned that ignoring this power dynamic between participants risks unreliable or invalid results. The study's small, geographically diverse sample limits generalizability. Additionally, the subjective nature of the data, though central to the thematic framework, raises concerns about the researcher bias and whether the framework fully captures the data richness and complexity. These were effective in exploring the aim as they captured student voices along with teachers' and parents' views on student culture and mental health. Semi-structured interviews allowed the researchers to follow key objectives whilst giving participants opportunity for deeper and more flexible responses. Like Research Paper 1, the study has inspired future work with plans to involve students as co-researchers to improve school culture and student mental health. This paper is being used to guide the structure for that next phase. However, the study's small sample size, just 3 schools from the same area limits how widely the findings can be applied and make it unsuitable for informing policies. The selection process for students and parents may have been biased, with schools possibly choosing participants who would reflect positively on them. As McCaffrey and Das simply imply, that schools typically can act as gatekeepers, which influences research in both helpful and also harmful ways depending on their biases. The thematic framework developed from the data only produced 4 dimensions, which may be too narrow and risk overlooking the full ranges of experiences. Research paper 1 used random sampling across 20 local authorities. Whilst not fully representative, this reduced research bias and gave a broader view of society compared to research paper 2, which focused on just 3 schools in one area, introducing more bias and reducing validity. Both papers built thematic frameworks to summarise interview findings. However, paper 2 involved multiple researchers in the analysis, leading to a more balanced and accurate interpretation. In contrast, paper 1 relied on a single researcher, increasing the risk of bias. Group interviews were used in both studies, which each acknowledged that group dynamics can shape results. Alder et al.'s idea that group interviews create safe peer environments was supported as both papers gathered richer data through group interactions. These dynamics also helped reflect power relationships, particularly relevant in paper 1's focus on interactions between local authorities and teachers. While interviews were helpful in supporting the research aims, both papers could have benefited from a mixed method approach. Ahmed in 2024 highlighted that combining qualitative and quantitative methods offers a fuller understanding and improves reliability through triangulation. This strengthens findings and better informs policies by combining numerical data with experiences. Both papers are now developing off their research, with paper 1 adopting mixed methods through national surveys to create more of a cohesive representation of current safeguarding situations. Thank you for listening to my presentation about interviews.